modify users. What an owner can do. So an owner and a contributor can do the same apart from the user management. Let's also see how it behaves now. So I have added this particular developer as a contributor. Let's go back into that particular account. So this is the developer's account, developer. Let's refresh this out. Again, it will take some time to reflect all these permissions and etc. Do you now see a subscription called something like this? And it is telling me there is something called what?
Yeah.
Specified access. It is not an owner right now. Let's go in here. And what I try to do right now is that now I'm logged in as a contributor. I want to, let's say, add one more user. Let's say I'm a contributor. I want to, let's say, add one more user. Again, where should I go? IAM. What should I do? Add. But do you see what happens out here? It's disabled. Reason being, I am a contributor. I'm not an owner. I won't have a permission to go ahead and add someone in here. I can create resource. I can create, let's say, users. I'm sorry. I can create resources. I cannot add users. Neither I can go ahead and delete something. So if I want to see what is my role, do you see something called view my access? If I click on this, it is telling what contributor this resource. When it means this resource, it's just pointing out to this particular resource called what? Subscription. So I am a contributor at a let's say a particular thing known as a subscription out here. This is how you sorry, this is how you invite a user. This is something that I did. I invited a user and I also went ahead and added a particular role to this user called as a contributor, wherein the user can create resources. We'll also see how the user can create resources and etc. The user can create resources, delete resources and etc. Everything an owner can do apart from user management. So as a contributor, as this particular developer one, even if I try to add someone, even if I go ahead and try to add someone, it'll give me a disabled role out here. Reason being, I'm not an owner, I'm a contributor. If the same thing if I do the same thing like an owner, I can. There is no option. There is nothing which is saying disabled and etc. Reason being, I am an owner for this particular subscription out here. Any questions till here? Any questions on what did we do till here? So we started off with what
No.
is a tenant. Yes, we started off with what is a tenant. We said how do you create something known as a subscription, and then we are saying inside a subscription how do you go ahead and invite a user. I did not create a user, I invited a user. Let's see how I can create a user. There are two things out here that's there on the portal. So if I go here into something called as the Azure Active Directory, into something called as users, I can say new user or I can say new guest user. If I say new user, there is something called invite or there is something called create. I invited him. I invited a particular user. I did not create a user. Now I'll create a user. If I say create a user, I'll say it is developer 2. Do you see what happens as in when I say developer 2? It's saying what? At the rate, something like this, gmail.onmicrosoft.com. Did you see this somewhere? Yes. In the organization level, what did you see this?
Yes, under subscription.
So if I go here, this is what? My primary domain. In the case of an organization, this primary domain will look like something like at the rate Microsoft.com or at the rate Accenture.com or at the rate HCL.com, meaning you can go ahead and if you have a domain, meaning if you bought a domain, you can go ahead add your domain, company domain as well out here. So if I create a user, this user will technically become developer at the rate somecompany.com. In my case, I don't have a domain. I'm just using what Microsoft is giving me. So it's telling on Microsoft.com. But in your case, if you're working in a company, it can be at the rate cognizant.com, at the rate accenture.com, at the rate something. So it's, I say developer at the rate something something. I give a name to this developer saying developer 2. developer 2. I'll say first name something like developer, and I'll say let me create a password. So I as an administrator, I'm creating a password for this particular developer. I'll just create a password out here and I'll say create this out. So now there is one more developer who's not invited, but he's added. Do you see creation type is called what? Invitation, but here you don't see anything, which means that this particular developer is added out here. Now, how do I log in this particular developer? If I go here, this is the entire ID of that particular developer, developer2 at the rate your domain. This is all my domain. In a case of an organization, this can be accenture.com, hcl.com, or something like that. Let's take this ID. Let's go to a different browser again. I'll say portal.azure.com. Again, I'll be logged in like developer1 because I've already signed in like developer1 out here. I'll say sign in with a different account or sign out, anything works fine. Say sign in with a different account. I'll say add. I copy that entire account called developer2 at the rate something like this. But in the case of an organization, it'll be developer2 at the rate cognizant.com or something like that. I'll say next. It's asking me to enter a password. This is a password that I set for this particular developer like an administrator. So what will happen is that when you join an organization, the first email will be coming from your IT team telling that, okay, fine, this is your ID, this is your password. The same laptop password can be used for, let's say, logging into, let's say, Azure as well. I'll just go ahead and I'll say give this particular password. And as and when I give this password, it will ask me to update the password because Microsoft knows that I have not created this one. Someone else created for me. So someone else knows my password. So for security purpose, Microsoft says update your password. So I'll do that. So let me update the password out here. Sign in. As in when I do this, again it says help me protect your account and etc. I'll just skip this for let's say 14 days right now. And I'm now logged in as what? The developer 2. This is how I created a user. I have not invited a user. Now the question is that then when will you invite a user? When will you actually create a user and etc. So when you invite a user, this is what happens. Let's say that again, I'll take the example of Tata. You're working with a company called Tata Motors. And what Tata Motors did is that they said a part of their Azure subscription is managed by, let's say, another company called Infosys. Infosys is doing some project for Tata Motors. What Tata does is that Tata doesn't want to, let's say, create a user of, let's say a company called Infosys. Let's say you're working for Infosys. Tata is your client. So you are now a contractor to, let's say, the organization called Tata. So what it does is that your ID at the rate infosys.com. So this is what you'll have already. You're working for a company called Infosys, so you'll have something called your ID at the rate infosys.com. This is what you'll have. So what, let's say, what Tata would do is that just go into something called invite a user, and they would invite this particular ID, saying it's a guest user just for a temporary purpose. They are working on some particular project out here and etc. But let's say you directly work for Tata. You're directly now working for Tata. That's when Tata will go ahead and create you as a user, create you as something called as a user so that you can get an ID called XYZ at the rate tata.com. Exactly. So that using this particular ID, you can log in, let's say, as an employee of that particular organization called Tata out here. And again, guys in the back, are you all able to hear my voice? I'm just a little conscious about that. Are you good with that? Okay, great. So I created a user and I also, let's say, added a user. And let's go again into that particular user whom I created, developer2. And if I come into something called as what subscriptions, you don't have any subscriptions. Why is it so? because we only added the user into the tenant. I did not, let's say, add that particular, or I did not give a role to this particular user on a subscription level. Again, if I have to make sure that this particular user also has an access, I go back into, let's say, my Azure account, into my subscriptions, and I'm again logged in as the administrator right now. So once I get into my subscription, which I will in a second, I'll go into identity and access management. I'll say add role assignment. I can give a role assignment like an owner or a contributor or something like this. I'll say next. I'll say select members. Now I'll select what? Developer 2. Select, review and assign this out. Again, it will take around 1 or 2 minutes for that particular developer to see all these things out. After a minute or two, he should be able to see that particular subscription telling that he has a contributor access out there. Again, this developer also cannot go ahead and add another user because he's a contributor, he's not an owner. This is how you can go ahead and add multiple users again. Again, the question can be that there are multiple users that are joining my organization. Let's say there are about thousands of users. Should I go ahead and add each and every user like this? It'll become very difficult, right? Then how should I do it? For which, if you go into your Active Directory, if you go into users, I said new user and etc. There is also something called what? Bulk operations. It'll say bulk create, bulk invite, bulk delete, download users and etc. You can say bulk create. What Azure will tell you is that, you know what, download this particular CSV template file. Meaning it's nothing but an Excel sheet Azure is asking you to download. You can download all these things out. You'll get an Excel. It's just giving you a format on what to do. Telling example, username, password, and you can give first name, last name, and etc. Like this, you can add multiple users, not one, not two, but multiple users in this sheet. Finally, come here, say upload your file, say submit. So if I come here and upload this particular file, and now it's telling it is not valid because I have not created anything out here. But when I create and say upload, I'll say submit, and it will automatically create all the users, or it will automatically, let's say, invite all the users, create all the users, or delete all the users that are a part of that particular Excel sheet automatically out there. That's how bulk operations actually work. That's how we as a part of an organization go ahead and bulk create, bulk delete users and all these things out here. I'm sorry. Groups, yes, good question. You can also create a user as a part of a group. You can do that, meaning if you go here, not only users, you can also add groups. Let's say I add a group. I already have a group called demo group. I can add a new group called, let's say, something like demo group 1. Again, there's something called Office 365 and security. I'll say it's a security. I'll say demo group 1. They create. What happens if I create a group is that when I create users, now I have something called demo group 1. When I create a user called developer 3, let's say I create a user called developer 3. I can, let's say, I'll say, okay, fine, auto generate. I can add this user as a part of this group already. You can say add this user as a part of this group. So what happens is that you're not just adding a user, you're adding a user as a part of a group. So this user is a part of a group called demo, let's say group 1. I'll say create this out. So this user is now added into the group membership. And what you can do is that you can have all the users. Now we are talking about 10,000 users. When you say bulk create, you also have the group option. You can say add all those 10,000 users at a go in one particular group. Now I have to also give permissions to all these 10,000 users. I'll have to also assign permissions to all these users. What I can do is instead of saying each and every user, I can say add a role assignment, add a contributor role. I'll say next. It says what? Users or also group assignments. So all those 10,000 users are a part of a group right now. I don't have to do individual assignments. I can go and select this members. I can say demo, sorry, I can say demo group, and you have all these things out here called demo group and demo group one. I can assign permissions on top of a group. What will happen if you assign permission on top of a group is that all the users inside that particular group will take the same set of permissions out there. So this is the advantage of adding people inside a group as such. Yes, good. Mhm. Existed into the group. Yes, permissions will come to that particular person. You don't have to again add him. So you can add a group. Firstly, assign the permissions to that particular group. When you're bulk creating users, if you look at this particular sheet, it will also tell you which group you want to add this particular person to. There's something called group also somewhere. So you can also say which group this particular person needs to, let's say, get added to. You can tell that particular group name. And when you, let's say, upload this particular Excel sheet, all the persons will be a part of a group and all the persons will start assign or will start getting permissions of that. So you don't have to go ahead into that particular subscription, say add and all these things. Yes, any more questions, guys, with this one? Anyone, any questions still here? You can give a role as an admin. Yes, you can, but we generally don't. Usually for a particular project, there are not more than, let's say, 5 or 6 administrators. Because if all are administrators, then let's say you can invite your own friend inside your organization, right? It will be a security complaints. So not everyone will have a role, or not everyone should have a role to go ahead and, let's say, add other users. No limitation at all. There is no limit at all. You can add any number of people inside a particular group, and you can, let's say, any number, any number. There is no static number. You can add any number of people per a particular subscription. There is no limitation at all. Mhm. Okay. Right. Okay. No, total sheet will be added because Azure doesn't know whether it's a wrong password or a right password. It is you who have to tell it whether it's a wrong password or a right password. So it will get created. All those users will be created, will, let's say, be getting created out there. No, he will be able to log in with the wrong password, but he'll be able to log in with the wrong password, update his password as and when he logs in. Because as you see, when I create a user, the initial password will any which ways be getting overridden. With the first time you log in, it's telling what is your current password, update your password. So when you update your password, give a right password. That's how you can do it. How to change the domain name again? For that, you need to, let's say, buy a domain. You need to have your own domain firstly. Either is something like that. Scroll down, there is something called what? Custom domains. You can add your own custom domain out here. You can say what is your domain name, say add domain. This is how you can add a domain out here. So as an organization, organizations will go for domains. They will go for domains, add a domain as such. Again, I am not getting into domains because there are something called records and all these things out there. Are a couple of things that I need to, let's say, help you all explain. So once the classes go in a little deeper, once we cover custom domains, I'll come back to this and also show you how to add a custom domain. Yes, any questions here, guys? Any more questions here? So
I have a
let's
question.
go ahead, please.
Irrespective of number of users I add, my data would be confidential, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So irrespective of the number of users you add, the data will be confidential. Yes. Only those users with a particular access will be able to, let's say, access your data in a secure way. Yes, the data will be confidential. Again, there are about 5 users. Let's say if you want to delete something, let's say these 3 users I just delete, I mean, I just added them as a part of this particular demo. I can, let's say, click on all these things and let's see if it allows me to delete, do a bulk delete out here. So 3 users deleted successfully out here. I can delete them. And in case you delete a user accidentally, all those users will be stored in something called deleted users for about 30 days. You can go ahead and restore all of them as well. All the permissions will be restored back again. So this is how you add and this is how you delete. And as and when I delete, right, after giving it a minute or so, this user will be able to see all these exceptions and all these things out. I won't be able to go do a lot of things out here and etc. Again, it will take a minute or so to get reflected. And after getting reflected, and after sometimes I need to sign in and sign out, this will not be, you won't be able to see all these subscriptions and etc. This will go. Now, because of the browser cache and a lot of things, you're still able to see the subscription. But in a minute or two, after I log in, I mean, after I log out and log in, you won't be able to see anything as such. So yes, any questions still here that I can take? How can, sorry? How can you view the activity from the user? Again, if you go into something called as your subscription, there is something called as activity logs. Every user, whatever an user does, all these activities will be registered. All these activities will be recorded in this particular, let's say, in this particular portal, wherein you can see what exactly did the user did. Did the user delete something? Did the user create something? Did the user do any kind of a management and etc.? All those things can be tracked from here. Now I created a role assignment. Do you see this is also being tracked? So as a user, I did not do anything. I just went in, logged in. That's it. So that is not tracked. But if you want to, let's say, go ahead and let's say create something, delete something, and etc., all those things will be tracked out here. Yes. Any more questions, guys? Anyone? Any questions? Let's see if people online have a question. Let's see. There are a couple of messages out here. Uh, if tenant add multiple users, how will the storage and credits be distributed? Storage and credits will be shared amongst those things. Meaning, if you have two different users, one user is, let's say, it's always a cumulative. One user is using, let's say, for about 100 rupees. The other user is using 200 rupees. So it will be 200 plus 100, 300 rupees will be, let's say, deducted cumulatively. Both of them share those credits. Let's see, confidentiality. I've answered that. All the rules are predefined rules. Not really. You can also add your custom rules, which we'll see. Yes, all the roles that we are doing is a predefined role, but you can also go ahead and let's say create your own custom role. You can also do that. We'll also look into custom roles as such. Yes. Any questions, guys, before we close? Anyone? Any questions before we can close for today?
Hello, Kiran. This is Santosh here. Kiran, I
Go ahead,
want to
please.
know that can we delete the invite user? Like we are done with our project, like we want to remove him.
Mhm.
Can we do it?
Yes, definitely. You can remove him. I did actually remove him. So if you look at it, I just deleted a user out of which this developer one was a guest user. So I can remove him. So just click on a user and you will get an option to delete that particular user. In my case, I'm an administrator, so that's the reason it's not giving a delete user as such. And in case of, let's say, a guest user, you can go ahead and let's say delete that particular user as such.
Thank you.
I my doubt is, suppose we have added one person as a reader. So in future, can we change him into contributor or owner?
But definitely yes. Definitely yes. We can change him into an owner or a contributor. We'll also see what happens if you have multiple role assignments. We'll also look at that particular aspect on what happens if you have multiple role assignments. How does this behave and all these things out. Yes. Any more questions, guys? Okay, one question I'll take. Is it possible to make changes in the activity log? No, you cannot make change in the activity log. It's all system generated. The reason that you cannot change all these things is because all these activities are audited. These are all system generated. You cannot change anything in the activity log as such. No one can change, not a user, not an administrator. No one can change all these things. These are all system generated. All right, so with that, we'll close this session. So what I expect you all to do is just try to do this demo, add multiple roles to a user, see if he's a reader, what kind of a role he gets, he is a contributor, what kind of a role he gets. Please create a subscription today. please try to go and create a subscription today. If possible, try to share subscriptions like the way I've shown you. You can add multiple users in your subscription, etc. So that throughout that particular course period, you can have multiple free trial accounts. You can practice on all these things, sir. All right, guys. Thank you and have a great day ahead. And we'll let's say meet in the next class. Thank you.